Welcome to the 2024 Amigos Retro Gaming Network Year in Awards, featuring John Boatofcar Shawler, the BRENT, and Amigo ARG. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the new annual tradition. It's the Amigos Retro Gaming 2024 Year in Awards. I'm your buddy, your good pal, Amigo ARG, joined by all the luminaries of the channel. Of course, in the middle here, the center square is the BRENT. And, yeah, Sumo Fighting Stance. And far across the line is our good buddy. It's the John Boatofcar Shawler.
I'm bringing the nightcap back, baby.
That looks good on you, Boater.
Thank you.
So here it is. It's the end of the year. And so as we did last year, we thought it would be fun to get everyone together, which is something we rarely get to do, and to talk about sort of a year in review and go over what we liked, what we didn't like, what you, the listeners and viewers, liked and didn't like, see how they mesh up, talk a few numbers, have a few laughs, have a good time. Before we get too deep in the woods here, fellas, I just want to ask you, up front, like, did you have things this year that you really enjoyed? What were your high points this year, Boat?
My high points this year were really, I think this year we played more good games. Like, I was looking over the list earlier today. I think the quality of the games in terms of games that I liked playing was higher this year than in any other year I can remember.
What about you, the BRENT?
I actually think the quality of games I played this year was a little below average. Going back over the list, I actually had a lot of difficulties picking out my top tier games because a lot of them were just middle of the road.
I really had a good time this year. I'm not so much the games, but just the doing the shows themselves. I really I thought that just as someone that works on these shows, as someone who tries to look at games and talk about them in a way that helps people understand how I feel about them, I feel like I had a better year. I guess we've been doing it long enough, Boat, to where maybe at least it took me a while to get the hang of it, but I've learned to enjoy looking at these games from a different aspect and a different viewpoint than I used to. So I thought the reviews that we put out there, I feel a lot better about them than I have in the past. I mean, you know what I mean, Boat?
Yeah. I when you do this for almost a decade, next year, 2025 will mark 10 years of the Amigos podcast. Yeah, I feel like I've come up with a way to talk about a game in a way that I'm not ashamed to listen to afterwards.
That's the watermark on that?
That's the watermark.
Very good, very good. Of course, one of the things that was a big change this year that kicked in at the end of last year was we did less shows with Boat moving out of the everything that wasn't Amiga. We kind of stuck the other shows into a revolution, the retro rotation, and so we ended up with less games to talk about, which is not a bad thing, if I'm honest, because last year it was insane. So I feel like this year I also had more time to come to grips with some of these games. It's a good thing, too, because we played some pretty complicated stuff this year, and it helped me a lot in terms of having enough time to sit down and try to figure this stuff out. BRENT, this is the first full year that you took on most of these roles on the show. What did you think about it, going full time with the rotation?
I think the retro rotation has worked out swimmingly. It gives us a time to highlight systems that don't get talked about nearly enough, which does open up more gaming opportunities. I've enjoyed that our game selection committee has done a great job in supplying us with games that typically we wouldn't have heard of otherwise. The workload, I think, is steady. I think it feels better now than it has for years. So big thumbs up. I'll really enjoy it.
All right, fellas, with all that said, let's go ahead and dig right in to our first category on the beloved CoCo. From the CoCo Show, we're going to discuss what we considered the best game of the year. BRENT, What did you think the best game of the year was on the CoCo this year?
This was probably the easiest choice for me out of all the different shows. This had a runaway winner in my eyes in the Quest for Zelda. I was blown away at how competent this was as a Zelda clone on my old little Coco. Uh, Enough so that I played through the entire game. I did beat this shortly after the show aired, and had a lot of fun doing it. It wasn't that I just had to beat it. It was I wanted to beat it. I wanted to play through the entire game, and it really did nothing wrong. Sure, the sword strikes was a little short, but once you get
Yeah.
used to it, it kind of becomes a second nature in the game. And it has all the bosses. It has bosses from Zelda. It has tons of map scenes from Zelda, secrets. It's all there. It's such a competent copy of a game that has, to my knowledge, was not copied anywhere else on any other systems near this level. That I would love to own a copy of this, and am still looking for a legitimate copy of it, even if it's just going to be a game in a bag. I really enjoyed it that much.
Bo, did you have to get to take a look at Zelda this year?
I watched the show and I rolled in as a viewer thinking that you guys are just going to murder this thing because we played lots of Zelda wannabes before on the Amiga, and they've all been to a man they've all been horrible, or to a lady, to a Princess Zelda they've all been horrible, and so I was shocked and amazed and gratified to see the Coco holding its own with this game, and so hats off to the programmer for making it, and hats off to Brent for finishing it.
Yeah, it was impressive, the BRENT, that you could finish that thing off, because I know it took you a good while, and I couldn't get past. Yeah, the sword was not the easiest weapon I've ever used, but I mean, I will say the attempt was good. I went in a whole different direction, fellas, when it came to my choice. And, back in the day, in the arcade, I was a big fan of Sinistar, the game Sinistar. So I had never played the game that I chose for best game of the year on the CoCo, which was Sinistar with 2 A's. I thought this game was really quite well done. I mean, it had all the elements of the arcade in there, including the speech. The speech and Sinistar himself are big components of the game that are in there. Without the speech, you're going to lose something. The Amstrad's got a real nice version of this, but it doesn't have the speech, and that kind of brings it down a notch to me. I thought this was a fun game, a lot of fun to play. I almost picked skiing, and there's a few others. Gate Crashers is another one I thought was incredible. But at the end of the day, the one I liked to play the most was Sinistar. Brent, you weren't around for this episode. Did you get a chance to actually play this, or have you played this in the past? It's a good-looking game.
I have not on the CoCo.
Bo, any thought on Sinistar?
I listened to this episode too, and I went back and watched the video, and I think that the graphics are unbelievable. It's very almost like Atari 7800 Asteroids, where they managed to spruce up the graphics. But the game does not have the speed, and this is a common refrain that you get a lot with the old CoCo, is that it wasn't built for speed; it was built for comfort. And so that's but again, another wonderful clone.
I would agree with you. Now, let's go to our folks from the Discord who chimed in about this one as well. So according to the folks in the Discord, their favorite game of the year, it was a tie, ladies and gentlemen. It was a dead tie. This is the only category I think where you get a tie. And the tie was between the Quest for Zelda and Sinistar.
Oh,
so we would agree in this case that's exactly the way we look at it. So the Discord folks agree with us on this one. So let's shift over now while we're on the subject of the CoCo. Again, it was a short year for CoCo games, but hey, every year's got a best game, and every year has a worst game of the year. Brent, what was your worst CoCo Show game of the year this year?
This is not a case of recency bias, but Horace Goes Skiing was a horrible showing. When you've got gates that you're trying to ski through, with trees in the middle of the gates, that just shows me poor programming. It shows me that the developers do not care about their products when they don't even make the effort to get that part of it right. A lot of people have issues with the traffic crossing scene. I didn't. I didn't think it was a great part of the game. It definitely had flaws too. But when you get to the meat of the game and they can't get that right, now, not good. Not good.
No. And the funny thing is, uh, I'd heard of this game, but I hadn't heard it on the Coco. Those Horus games, they get around. I know, Boat, you've know about the old Horus games. They've gotten to a couple of the systems that we've covered over the years. But on the Coco, I'd not heard of it. But guess what? My worst Coco game of the year, Horus Goes Skiing. Was that was my choice for worst Coco game of the year, and for the exact same reasons you said. I mean, there's a game here, but why'd they go and do it this way? You couldn't do the slightest thing to make it work. I mean, when you make part of your game where it can't be successfully completed, that's stupid. That's a stupid way to do a game. And so that easily earned my my vigor and vitriol for worst game of the year. Bo, did you have a thought on worst game of the year on the Coco?
It's hard to pick another game other than Horus Goes Skiing, to tell you the truth.
Well, I understand. And guess what? We did also poll the channel for the worst game on the Coco. And guess what? Horus Goes Skiing was the popular least favorite of the bunch. It was quite roundly hated. So there you go. Horus, boy, I almost feel bad now when you thoroughly can one. But that's the way she goes. Horus Goes Skiing, a real dud game. I wanted, while we're on the subject of Coco, while we're still here, I want to talk about, we did get some, just a few submissions from the folks on the CoCo Show. And I want to read to you. Firstly, from Pajako, for best, I voted for was Demolition Derby, a basic and quite frustrating game, but probably the one I actually played the most. Worst, Horus Goes Skiing. Lousy port that could easily have been better, and really, it wouldn't have needed much to be tweaked. L. Curtis Boyle chimed in. He agrees on Horus Goes Skiing. It was close to being good. Hungry Horus is a better port. And lastly, Mitsuyama chimed in, the best game has to be The Quest for Thelda because of the sheer ambition alone. Horus Goes Skiing was appalling. There's no reason why it had to be that bad. And I would say that's a good summarization of that. A real dud in Horus Goes Skiing. So let's switch gears, gentlemen. And now let's talk about ARG Presents, the awards in the ARG Presents category. Of course, we had about 1 million games that we covered this year, Brent, on ARG Presents. So there was a ton to choose from. But before we get to the game of the year, I want to talk about we did so many shows, and a lot of times the fans pick the shows. I mean, often. Did you have a show this year or a subject that you really liked? Did you have any that you absolutely couldn't stand?
For ones I liked, learning about the Russian games was fantastic. I really liked going down that pathway. It was informative. It was fun. The games weren't very good, but that's okay. The experience made it far worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree. I like that show an awful lot. The ones I've got listed on my chart here, I really enjoyed doing the Plato. That was a lot of fun because I had to sign up for a service to do it. I had to have a service that I had to log on to the Play-Doh, make-believe Play-Doh or whatever it is. Maybe there's one out there. I don't even remember. But it was a lot of fun. I liked the Russian one. I also liked the all the stuff we did with Dean Bent. It was a lot of fun for me. Dean's a real cool guy. It was neat to get that inside Jack, talking to him. So I thought those were a lot of fun. Boat, anything struck your fancy over the year for ARG?
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite episode was undoubtedly the Play-Doh episode. Because
Really?
not only did you play games on this wacky thing, but I learned a ton about what the Play-Doh was. Because I'd heard of the Play-Doh cart before because it's got all kinds of integrations with the FujiNet. But the way that you guys explained it, I think that you could have published that as a standalone video, and that would have been better than any of the other Play-Doh crap I've seen on YouTube. So that was great.
Well, thank you, Boat.
I also enjoyed the Captain Power episode, of course, because
Yeah.
it was just so wacky.
I will say, I enjoyed everything up to the point where we taped that, because it was so. Me and Brent had so much trouble playing Captain Power that it was unbelievable. But I loved having the toy. So you can see it in the back behind me. It's up on the shelf in the box for Captain Power. So that was fun. I didn't know much about Captain Power. In fact, I thought it was animated until we did the show. So I learned a lot about that one.
Now, I will have to say, I did enjoy watching all the episodes of Captain Power. I watched the entire run.
There you go.
I didn't enjoy playing it at all, but it was fun to watch the shows.
Maybe we moved some Captain Power toys this year. So let's get right into it then, Brent. We did a lot of games this year. I mean, we did a ton of games. And I'll go ahead and I'll lead the dance on this one since I asked you first last time. So my overall best favorite ARG game of the year, I picked, this is a surprise, and this one just barely inched out a couple other ones that I really liked. And I sort of disqualified a couple like Map Mania and stuff and Moon Patrol. But my favorite game of the year that I'd never played before that I ended up playing a ton was Poker Night 2. I loved that game. That thing was a lot of fun. It plays a good game of poker, and it sort of simulates playing poker with your buddies if your buddies were like real weird and like robots and demon hunters. It was
and
a
had
fun
interesting
game.
lives.
It did, and you could play it over and over, and you get some repeat texts, but not often. You get a lot of unique stuff. It's also super laid back. I had a lot of fun playing that on stream one night. So that was my ARG favorite this year. Amazingly, believe it or not, it just edged out Miss Dynamite. Was Poker Night 2. What was your favorite of the year?
Well, Aaron, you just mentioned it. Miss Dynamite.
Miss Dynamite.
For a game I had never heard of to come out of the blue and give me so much enjoyment was I was blown away. Finding the strategies, finding the different quirks of the game, I just took incredible pleasure learning about this game, playing this game. It's still one I fire up every once in a while when I've got a few moments working on high scores. And it was completely left field. It was one that I had never heard of before. And for it being a Universal title, I mean, it's unreleased, so that's probably why I've never heard of it. But being a hidden Universal title made it even better. So I really enjoyed playing and learning about Mrs. Dynamite.
You know, it's amazing to me that this one didn't get released, and this one's a few tweaks away from being. I mean, it's a good game on its own out of the box, but I mean, it could be really tweaked up a little bit to be incredibly awesome. I really enjoyed it. It was, like I said, I felt like I knew a lot about Universal, but between this and the Laserdisc version of Mr. Do, I clearly didn't know as much as I thought I did. So there you go. Bo, did you have any games that you heard about on the show that you got into?
You know, I did not play any of the games that you guys covered this year. One of the things that it saddened me about stepping away is I stepped away from all these shows because I didn't have time to play the games. I just enjoy listening to you guys talk about them. The only games on the list that I have played are Poker Night 2, which I agree is great, and Bayou Billy, which is horrible, and it's all Nintendo's fault. This is another example of Nintendo making things difficult for Americans because of the rental market, just like the later Ninja Gaiden games. So that sucked. But you know, you guys, I feel like I've played the games after I listened to your show, and I definitely want to go back and listen to the Universal episode because I missed that episode completely, and I love Universal games. So
yeah. So just to get the Discord in here, their favorite ARG Presents show this year or their favorite game, I should say. You're not going to believe this one. This really caught me by surprise. Their favorite, it just beat out Moon Patrol and Miss Dynamite, was Colin McRae's Rally on the PlayStation, of all games. Have you ever played this one, Boat?
no, I've never played any rally game as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, Colin McRae got the most votes. That was an episode that I'd almost forgotten about, to be honest with you. But I remember, I think this was one of mine too, because I played some of the Colin McRae games on the PC, and I mean, if you're into rally car, I think it's a pretty fun game. I found I had a lot of enjoyment at just learning about Colin McRae in that episode more as much as anything else. But Brent, any thoughts on that one? That's the one the people picked as their favorite game this year.
Stunned.
No.
I didn't enjoy this game at all. So
Why?
Stunned.
Wow. Okay. Well, fair enough then. Fair enough. Well, listen. Since you're feeling kind of uppity, let's get to the worst game of the year. Now as usual, we play a lot of duds, and this category could be taken, however you want. I mean, really. I mean, you could. There's a lot of different angles you could take for worst game of the year on ARG Presents. What came into your mind as your least favorite game we played this year?
Aaron, you're not going to be happy.
Okay.
You're not going to be happy.
That's okay.
I chose Play-Doh's original graphical Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not unhappy. I understand. Why did you choose that one in particular?
While the game itself propelled the genre and other games to incredible heights, it itself was a incredible disappointment of just randomness. This wasn't, randomness like you see in some games where you have to work with the randomness. The entire game was random, from loot drops to attack rolls. You couldn't run away from your enemies. It was just flawed. And I'm glad that it exists because it pushed the genre forward. But to go back and to play it now, it was no fun. It was no fun.
Well, I can understand why you picked that, but that's not even close to what I picked, and I'll tell you why. Because I think there's a game there that I played that game way longer than the game. I had a tie for my least favorite I had two games for least favorite of the year. One of them you'll probably barely remember until I mention it, and then one you'll absolutely remember. One of the games I picked this year was called Tekkaman Blade. And it was a game where it was a fighting game where you played with giant robots, and it sucked.
Was crap.
It was horrible.
Yeah, it was crap.
It was horrible. But if there was one game that I found even less endearing this year, and it's funny, Boat mentioned it, Bayou Billy. A game where you literally can't get anywhere, and you literally can't do anything because someone somewhere decided to make the American release of this game, impossible. And what made me more mad than anything on the Megalovid or any of the other little remedial systems that we played this year was like, this is the NES. They had all the tools at their disposal. They went and made a good game, and then they wrecked it. Any great game this game looked great. I remember when you rented it, I was like, man, this is gonna be a real winner, and it sucked, unplayable, and that makes me mad. And when I get mad, you get worst game of the year, in my opinion. So and Boat, I mean, you're not wrong. Let's just put it that way. I don't know if that was your worst game of the year, Boat, but you mentioned it, and you're not wrong.
Yeah, it's the only game that I played on the list other than Poker Night 2, and I have a feeling that it would probably be my worst game of the year because of the aforementioned anger.
Have you ever played any of the versions, like the Japanese version?
Yeah.
Supposed to be
so
better.
You go back and you play the Japanese version, and you realize this game is great. It's like Double Dragon. The enemies have half health. The stages are shorter. There are checkpoints in the driving areas, so you don't have to do it all in one go. In every way, it's a better game. I think it's called Swamp King or something like that. It's not called Bayou Billy.
Fair enough. We did get one Discord comment here I wanted to read, and as it pertains to ARG Presents. I want to make sure I know who said this before I read it here. I think this was Pajako. Yes. So Pajako says, I voted in a tough call. I voted with Mrs. Dynamite. It's a genuinely good game, but the fact is it was discovered by accident. I mean, never have seen the light of day is even more amazing. The least favorite game he mentioned, the Mego Minivid, a fascinating device. Shame it's not well documented or emulated. And I can understand that because if you'll recall, that's the little like breakout style game that we only had. I think we had one or two available games to play on it. It
Yeah,
was
we had
real,
one.
real old. I think it even predated the Microvision, or maybe it was right after the Microvision. So that one, if you go in for just a really old game, I can understand that because it's really old. So what are you gonna do? There's nothing you can do about that.
That's what
So
we give you a pass, Aaron.
thank you, thank God. I'm glad I'm getting a pass. I didn't know that. Let's talk about the next of our shows here, fellas. It's the Atari ST Show. Boat, how much do you miss not doing the Atari show every week? I set him up, you knock him down, brother.
Listen. There's nothing. It's nothing against the ST. It's just most of the games are bad and most of the games don't work right. It's hard to emulate, and I never felt good after touching it.
Wow, it's a full-on burial right there. So, Brent, this was your first year with the ST. What did you think? What did you think about the Atari ST? What did you think so far, I guess? You, Brent.
It figured out. Something else falls apart. If it was just playing the system, I mean, I have to accept what it is. It's a machine that does a lot right and sometimes even more wrong.
Yeah.
But incredible good games out there for it.
So I guess I'll lead the dance here on this one. So I will say last year, Boat, when me and you looked over this list, man, last year was much, much worse than this year, in my opinion.
I will say that the list of games this year is much improved.
So there were 2 games. Believe it or not, there were 2 games in my top 2.
I can believe it. 2 games in the top 2.
No, I mean there were 2 games.
Stunning.
Let me rephrase that.
A list of 2.
Okay, smarty pantses. There were 2 games. I mean, I'm just stunned that there were 2 that I actually didn't hate. How about that? Does that make you feel better? There were 2 I didn't hate.
Ariel of the ST.
Well, no, I'm just saying. Last year, remember last year we picked Stario's Christmas, for God's sakes. I mean, that's horrible. So the game I ended up choosing as my Atari ST game of the year, and this may be controversial, but I don't care because it's the one I had the most fun on, was BattleTech. I had a lot of fun playing BattleTech on the ST. This is a game I had a cup of coffee with when I had a PC. Back in the day, I had the PC version. But when you do one thing about this show, you don't get no cup of coffee, brother. You're in. That means reading the docs, figuring out what's happening. This is a deep game. I mean, it's deep. There's crap going on daily. You have to look around and search and try to figure out what's happening. The story's cool. It's a cool game. I really dug it. And so this one just barely edged out a few of my other favorites to be number 1 on my list of the Atari ST games. I think this is one that if you haven't given this a whirl, the BattleTech game, I think you should give it a shot, especially if you're into that sort of thing. Brenner, what did you have as your favorite game this year?
You could have just kept the footage rolling, Aaron, because I also picked BattleTech.
There it is. So you too.
It is a complicated game, and it is certainly not without its flaws, but this is a game that you could really sink your teeth into and play for a long, long time. It's got a lot going for it where it stays in universe. It's got a lot going against it too. It's incredibly hard to get into, but if you are willing to stick with it, you have a really good adventure on your hands.
I agree with you. Now I was interested to see what how the voting would go in for the Discord people, because me and you, of course, we're fresh to the ST, and so other people that have had more experience, they may pick something else. So I looked at Discord, and their winner this year for the Atari ST show. Let me scroll down here, make sure I got it. But I don't want to say what's wrong. And yes, that's exactly what I thought it was. And one pretty handily was Pirates. Sid Meier's Pirates for the Atari ST. Now, both me and you had a round of Pirates on the Amiga back in the day, and when I came into this one, I learned a lot more and did a lot better. And I thought this was probably my second or third favorite game this year. Do you remember? Did you enjoy Pirates we played on the Amiga, Boat, back in the day?
I think this was one of those that I didn't read the docs. I didn't know what I was doing. Most
I
of the
think you're
gameplay
right.
elements we skipped. So we're going to have to wait for a second look at Pirates before I can give it. But I have a feeling it's a much better game than I gave it credit for originally.
I'm readier this time, and I got into it on the ST, and it's funny. I'm having played both. I thought the ST did a good job with this. Brent, what do you think about Pirates as the number one game for the listeners in the Discord?
I can certainly see, especially if you grew up with this. For me, I like giant robots more than I like pirates. So I think
Fair enough.
that influences my decision on which game I'm going to like more. But yeah, Pirates is a mighty fine choice.
Yeah, I think that was an excellent choice. Now, I'm gonna let you lead the dance on this one, Brent. The worst ST game. Now, I will say there was no ST game this year that was as bad as games we've played in the past, in my opinion. Because me and Boat, we suffered through some just god awful, alleged demo type games that were the dirt worst. I thought we had a much better selection this year. What was your worst game?
Yeah, I actually had trouble finding a worse game. The ST this year was king of middle of the road, which isn't a bad thing. But ultimately, I had to pick Targon for my worst game.
Oh, Targon! I can't
Yeah.
believe it. Not Targon.
And
Why?
the reason is the heart of the game, gameplay, I should say, is swordplay. And when you limit your swordplay to making one move actually mean something, and everything else is garbage, and your only attempts to win is keep slashing until your enemy is pressed against the back wall, I think that makes for a bad game. And
it's just like real combat.
And it's unfortunate. I think if this had a little more time to cook, or someone went back and polished this up a little bit, it could be a fine game. I think the exploration in this is great. I think the different elements of the game, different objects you have to use in certain places to progress is fine. But when 50% of your gameplay is push against back wall, hope not to die, I just can't support that.
That's not down with push against back wall, hope not to die. I don't hate that aesthetic. I will say I went a different direction again because there was a game I didn't like it in the arcade. I don't like the other ports. I didn't like it here, and that was the old Bonanza Brothers. I thought this game was not that good, and it's still, like you said, when it comes to bad ST games, this would have been in contention for one of the best ST games for last year, probably.
Yes.
But this year, I actually liked Targon, but you can see why something like that would appeal to me because I like Sword of Sedan. I like big dumb guys with swords killing stuff. So I was down with that. But with this one, I just had trouble getting into. Don't get me wrong, I like a good heist game, and there's elements that I really like, but I didn't like the graphical style. I didn't like the gameplay elements they put in here. I just didn't like it that much. It just didn't do it for me, for whatever reason. Bo, I don't know how many of these you saw. Did you have a game that stuck out on the list this year for you?
Well, as soon as you started comparing Targan to Sword of Sodan, I knew that was going to be my winner for the worst.
Oh, how can you say that? You know how much I love that game.
I know you love Sodan, but who's kidding who?
Take off, hey. So we going over to our Discord people here. Let me nose down here. So on the Atari ST, I mentioned that Pirates was voted Game of the Year. We did get a couple comments here amongst the people. But Jocko writes in, the best for me was Goblins. That's 3 eyes, by the way. I had a lot of fun revisiting this on the ST, and I played this the most. Pirates is great, but it's certainly not in my wheelhouse. Worst game was probably Captain Dynamo, a game made needlessly hard to mask a very short game. Salem OK chimed in, 100% biased to vote. Battletech was the best game this year. Mitsuyama also chimed in, I voted for Battletech as best game too, but I would have to agree with Pajaka that Captain Dynamo was the worst. I went back, and when I was trying to pick, I was like, man, did I hate Captain Dynamo? Because I don't remember hating it, and I didn't hate it, and I actually went and played it this week. It's actually, I kind of like Captain Dynamo. It's got its problems, but again, I don't think it's the worst game. Do you remember much about that one, the Brenner?
I do. It's cheap. And I think that was definitely my biggest problem with it, is it would set you up to fail by bad level design. But for me, compared to Targon, uh, Targon was just far, far worse.
I don't know. I don't know about that one. All right, we're going to move out of the Atari ST and into everyone's favorite ARG Sinclair, the lovable show about the ZX Spectrum. And we're going to talk best game of the year. Brent, you were here for the full year this year of entries on the ZX. And again, we had a pretty good bumper crop of specky games this year, in my opinion. Which one tickled your fancy the most?
Now, this is with the stipulation that we are not including next games.
Well, you could, so we separated the poll, so we'll get into that. But I picked an overall, but you can do it however you like. It's our show, we can do what we want.
Yeah, for best ZX Spectrum game, I picked Thunderbirds.
Really?
I really enjoyed the puzzle elements. I thought it was well thought out. I thought the controls were great. I thought the graphics were good enough. I thought the sound was okay. And it was enjoyable, and I felt like I was getting somewhere. The biggest problem with Thunderbirds is you can put yourself in a position where you can no longer win the game, and you might not know that for a long time, which I wish they had some way of kind of remedying that. But this was a very good puzzle game that I was not expecting to enjoy, and really went in there and had a good time with it.
This game, it was not my favorite. I will say that. However, as I was going through these last night, I went back to watch some video on this and stuff. This has got to win the award for the most goofy conversion of a show or movie to a computer because of the pushing of the blocks and stuff with the ships. That's just, I didn't see that coming, if I'm honest. So that one struck me as odd. Did you get a chance to look? Did you see that episode, or did you have a favorite this year, Boat?
Yeah, I have a definite favorite. I don't know how. I didn't play Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
But Frankenstein Dr. Acula combo, to me, this is the essence of what a ZX Spectrum game should be. Your single screen platformer that does some things that are fun and inventive that not many other games do. It's colorful. It uses the whole palette. There's no monochromatic isometric BS involved. It's just solid action, brother, and I love it. So hats off to Happy Coding and his team of coders that put those put that dual pack together.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, I do want to state for the record, I did not play that, so I left it off my list of available choices because that was a week I was absent.
There you go. So I will say it's funny, Boat, because me and you are a lot alike in a lot of ways. And guess what? Another way is I picked Dr. Acula and Frankenstein as well. This game, like I said, now the guy that originally did these, I wish I could remember his name, is a genius. He didn't do that many games either, and when Happy and his crew over at the Midnight Brew company decided to package these in some kind of like Halloween box set, everyone's working an angle or whatever. Colin Stewart, thank you guys. It's trying, they're trying, but this right here was a stroke of genius, and they went through and cleaned them up, added the tunes, and having not played the original versions of these, just having played the 2024 releases, man, I knew when I saw these at the International Computer Club, I gotta have them. I was like, Happy, get this, get me a review copy of the sucker, and this was my combo game of the year. It was great. It's got everything I love. This has got everything I love on the Spectrum. It's the bright and colorful. The gameplay elements are there. It's got the platforming. It's right up my alley. And so when you said that, Bo, because we're similar in a lot of ways, I'm not terribly surprised. I thought that was an awesome, awesome game. We did hear from the Discord on this one, and everyone's got their own opinion on these things. And I will say on the Discord, I did split these up in between the ZX Next and just the regular ZX. But for me, I just picked an overall favorite. I will say, Baggers in Space would be an easy number 2 or number 3 for me. It was a great game for the ZX.
Yeah,
Next.
Baggers in Space would probably be the best Spectrum game I've played. If we're making a combo of the two, I really enjoyed it.
So this one surprised me what the Discord shows, but maybe it won't surprise the people that are hardcore Spectrum fans. So winning by several votes was the ZX port of Rampage. Rampage was the winner this year. I was surprised, and I'll tell you why. Not that aside from the fact that I'll just think I think Dr. Acula is a better game. I mean, I thought Rampage was a noble effort, but I was surprised that the game that came in second didn't win, which was a game that I thought was a real good game where time stood still, but it got beat out as well. Now the overall votes getter from the ZX Next and the ARG Sinclair, of course, the ZX Next had its own vote, was Baggers in Space, which is also was quite popular. But what do you guys think about the ZX version of Rampage?
Again, this was one that I didn't get to play, so I can't really comment on the quality.
That is
It is
funny. The
one-
people loved and they loved the ones that you weren't there on, bro. What does that mean?
Recency bias.
Oh, that's what it is. Have you played this one, Bo, during your many ZX travels?
No, but you know, from your review, you seem to enjoy it, and so you know, Rampage is a tough game to screw up unless it's the Atari 8-bit version. That's the dirt worst, But you know, the CoCo 3 version is great. The NES version is okay.
Yeah.
The Master System version is fantastic. So you know, I'm not surprised that the ZX could get it done.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but hey, the people have spoken. You can't go against the people. So there you go. So let's talk about the dud this year on the ZX Spectrum. I'll lead it off this time. My least favorite game, and I will say I had to go through the list several times to try to determine which game I hated the most. And the game I hated the most probably isn't the worst game, but it's a game I much like Bonanza Brothers. It's a game I didn't like in the arcade, and it's a game I didn't like on the ZX, and that's the Ghouls and Ghosts. I just didn't do it for me. I still think it's too hard. I thought they took a few shortcuts here as well. I mean, again, it's for the ZX. I'm gonna say it's a triumph or whatever. It's okay, but for me it just didn't work. I didn't like it. Brent, what did you think of this one, and what did you end up picking?
This was number 2 for my best game of the year, by the way.
Really? Wow, that's crazy. Okay.
Ghouls and Ghosts would have been number 2 if I was picking a list. So I didn't mind the difficulty. I thought the transition to the Specky was incredible. No, my worst game of the year is a proper worst game of the year, both in value, gameplay, and length, and that's Bugaboo the Flea.
Really?
Absolutely. Any game that is one board, you get one level, and the controls are the game as you fling yourself to and fro, and the board was not particularly well made. Random elements stop it from being a proper speedrun game. It was just bad overall in everything except for graphics, and the graphics weren't great.
You know, this is an odd one, Bugaboo. I pondered this one but I mean, it's a different sort of game.
It is.
I mean, I think, and that's why I didn't consider it as one of the worst. I mean, it's also difficult, but it's rewarding when you get it right. You're right. It's not the easiest game to speedrun because of the random elements, but I mean, it's very different. The unique gameplay is. This is the time when people took chances with their games, and I think the developers of this took a chance. And it's funny because people are passionate on both sides of the argument when it comes to this game. I've seen people that absolutely hated it, and people that absolutely loved it. And so, I'm not terribly surprised that you picked it. But I mean, I thought it was a pretty decent little game, if I'm honest. Have you seen this one, Boater?
What really pushed it over the top for me was the game to price ratio. When you have an absolute full price on the shelf game, and you only include one level that can theoretically be beaten in less than 20 seconds.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong, but then you got to do it quicker. You see, that's the thing. Anything on the anything on the ZX strike you was god awful this year, Boat?
Nothing god awful. I think Brent makes good points about Bugaboo the Flea, but it's hard for me to totally dislike a game that looks like that. That
Yeah,
I never I never fault a game for being too short as long as there is some way that you can sort of beat your time. And I realize that it disqualifies it from being a speedrun game for a variety of incidents. But to me, I think Rocky Horror was a real missed opportunity. You could have made a Maniac Mansion ripoff out of Rocky Horror quite easily, and could have done it really well. And instead, what you got was not that.
I
Just
actually
for the
enjoyed Rocky
record,
Horror.
that was my third favorite game for the
Yeah,
Spectrum.
I liked Rocky Horror. I thought, I mean, it was. You're not wrong, by the way, but I
You're
mean,
right. Yeah,
I thought what was there was not bad, and not
if
bad
it
at
did
all.
not have a Rocky Horror's the framework, it would have sucked. But since
Yeah.
it did, there was enough moments that I enjoyed it.
I'm a pathetic Rocky Horror super fan too, so there's that. And I will say, if it done really bad, also when you're a super fan, you can get real mad about stuff, but they don't do a good job. I thought it was pretty good. It wasn't the best. The people in Discord did chime in over a few things. Pajako chimed in and said best game he voted on was the Frankenstein Dr. Acula combo, because that's how you do a remaster of a game, and it was still classic specky action. Worst, Jeff freaking Capes, God rest his soul, by the way, an over complex game that should have been just been track and field controls. The best next game had to be Baggers. I really enjoyed it, and it took that classic jetpack formula and moved it on just a bit and kept the core spirit of the genre. Worst, the next game, easily Bikers. Not a bad game, but really felt like more of an expanded tech demo. Mitsuyama chimed in. Best specky game for me is Rampage. I think it's a really good conversion of the arcade game. My vote for the worst specky game goes to Bugaboo the Flea. The best next game was Head Over Heels. It looks fantastic and plays great. It's probably my favorite version of Head Over Heels on any platform. The worst next game was Bikers. It's not a bad game, but lacks some polish, and which makes it the least favorite of the three next games covered this year. Paul, a.k.a. Hermsky, popped in. He said, that's the exact opposite for me. Bugaboo Game of the Year, Rampage worst. Jed Burns also chimed in on this one. Baggers in Space was the standout for me. It was a lot of fun. But the original Spectre, Where Time Stood Still, stands out as the pinnacle of 80s game. And I will say that was real high on my list. I thought that was Bo, you remember when we played The Great Escape?
Yeah,
And it was a real complex, sort of difficult game.
Mm-hmm.
Same guy, same outfit, but a more refined, sort of an easier version of that. You'd probably really dig it, actually. I thought it was quite a clever game. What's that?
It's easy at all.
I didn't say easy. I said easier than The Great Escape. There's a big difference. You haven't played that. It's not the easiest game I ever saw. And Boat knows what I'm talking about on that one. So let's move along to the granddaddy here, and that's the Amigos. Now, Bo, we had a pretty good year this year of games. I don't think it's the best of the Amiga titles we've ever looked at, but I thought we had a pretty good selection. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think this. On the contrary, I think this is one of the best years that we've had in totalitarianism. It's not the right word.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Keep it simple for the dummy.
If you look at all of the titles that we played, there were so many more hits than misses here than is normal.
Yeah, yeah, there were a lot of good stuff in here. Since you've been sitting quietly for us, I'm going to let you lead the dance here. What did you have on your list, Boat, for the best game of the year on the Amiga?
Okay, well, I'm going to give you 3 of my finalists, and then I will announce the winner. Okay,
You're pulling to me.
I get to talk extra because I'm only on 1/3 of the shows.
Get in there.
Or 1/4 of the shows. So first up, Fairy Tale Adventure. That game blew me away. I was expecting it to suck and suck hard, but it actually was amazing beyond my wildest dreams. I was expecting it, again, much like Legend of Zelda, because people always talk about Fairy Tale Adventure and Felda, or Felda. They never talk about Felda and Fairy Tale Adventure. Zelda and Fairy Tale Adventure in the same breath when they talk about, like Zelda sucks because Fairy Tale Adventure is great. And I was like, these are just Amiga fanboys. They're just trying to like root for their own. But no, this game is truly, truly magnificent, and push the envelope in so many ways for the time that it's just incredible. So that's number one.
I was dreading that game. That's another one. And I agree with you. It really surprised me at how playable it was. But
Yeah. Number two is the Plan 9 from Outer Space. Plan 9 from Outer Space was incredible because, again, I thought it was really going to be horrible. I thought it was, I knew it was a point and click adventure game. And I was like, well, is this going to be like some sort of Sierra thing, or is it going to be frustrating? But the storyline I thought was great. That you're tracking down the reels of of the movie. Meanwhile, you see all of the characters from the movie pop up in cameo roles over and over and over again, which I found to be hilarious. Especially Thor dressed up in all his different guises, including as a fish. So that game I thought was brilliant. And finally, the recently released King and Balloon. This was an arcade title that I'd never played before. I love the sort of infinite lives mechanic where you're just waiting until all your kings are carried off, but you get as many fighters as you want. I thought that was super interesting and cool. And it was an arcade game that I'd never played before, and it's just another example of sort of the renaissance that we're having right now of arcade conversions on the platform itself, thanks to the game jams and other things like that. So King and Balloon on the Amiga, my third finalist. And my winner for this year is Plan 9 from Outer Space. This game summed up all of the great things that I love about adventure games. It was funny. You had a variety of settings that you'd go to, some of which were the same, which made it more funny. The puzzles were not too insane. There was not too much moon logic involved. I love the fact that there were actual clips from the movie in the game, digitized. It wasn't perfect. This game suffers from mega HUD. You only get about 1/6 of the screen visible. But apart from that, I thought that this was a real winner and a real undiscovered gem in terms of like the best graphical adventure games on the Amiga.
First of all, I loved King and Balloon. I thought it was a real good choice. I thought it was a great game. It's sort of like Miss Dynamite. It's a game, except it was released, but I never played it. So it's great that it got brought over. I did not like Plan 9, as you know. And the funny thing is, I love the movie. I've seen it about 1,000,000 times. And I love Ed Wood. But I thought this was and there were parts of this I thought, a lot of stuff you said I agree with. The different character with things cute. There's a lot of it. It wasn't my cup of tea. But it may be, if you're an adventure guy, it may be right up your alley. But it definitely, I will say it was unique. There's no doubt about that. This is one I really had to ponder it about, but I when I thought about it, I was like, which game impressed me the most? Now I'm going to come clean here, because we just covered on Amigos, we just covered the Sentinel, and the Sentinel is a game that I could have been on my list easily, but I didn't include it because I didn't have it on our poll, and so I didn't think it was fair. So Sentinel ended up getting shoved into next year's voting. But my favorite game this year on the Amiga, the new thing I never played before, was Darkmere, The Nightmare's Begun. We played this, I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months ago. It's an isometrical game where you travel this town. You're trying to break this, you're trying to represent your family, break this curse and get the people that invaded your town out. And this is the kind of game. This is a lot like Fairy Tale Adventure, Bode. It's a game when I saw what we were playing, I'm like, oh, good God, no, because we've been burned so many times. We're both gun shy. We've touched the hot plate over and over. But this one I found surprisingly playable. I enjoyed the graphics. I enjoyed a lot of the game. And I thought it was fun. It's not perfect. It's got another game that I wouldn't say the sword play is necessarily the best. In fact, it might be the worst. But overall, I found it to be a very enjoyable game.
Very Targon-inspired combat.
Yeah, it is. You're not wrong, but it's deeper than just that. And I think they really had a good thing going with this one. And when I looked over the list of games, I mean, we did a lot of retro review stuff this year, and I don't usually add that in when I pick my games. For that sort of thing. So I want to, and of the fresh games we played, this one was right at the top for me in terms of how much I enjoyed it. Any thoughts on any of this, Brent? Did you get to play many of these games or have a look at them?
I mean, the ones you're mentioning, I have not played. I looked over your list though, and I mean, you reviewed Lemmings this year, and it's hard not to pick Lemmings for Game of the Year. So, I mean, sometimes the classics are just the best.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because as I look over at the votes from our Patreons, the win, and this one just edged out, of all things, the Killing Game Show, if you could believe it. But the winner was, as voted on by the Discord, was in fact Lemmings. Lemmings, the all-time classic. I loaded up. I did an Amiga Christmas games stream a couple weeks ago, and loaded up Christmas Lemmings or Holiday Lemmings, whichever you want. And I'll have to say, it holds up great. The concept of Lemmings is evergreen, isn't it, Bode?
Yeah, I mean, this is one I could have easily chosen.
Sure.
Because it's an all-time classic. To be honest with you, I wanted to choose something different.
Yeah, I'm the same way. But it's like, I mean, I could have chose Wings or any number of things, but I mean, this one was.
You didn't go up for Wings.
I'm just saying. In the past, I could have chosen. I didn't because I like to pick new stuff when out of the retro stuff. And this is another one. But I mean, yes, no one's gonna fight you on this. Now, Bo, I want to get your thoughts on this. Nipping at the heels of this was the Killing Game Show.
This is the shadow of the beast of this year. This is a game that everybody remembers fondly, but it is not a good game. It is not well designed. It's okay to look at. It shows off the graphical prowess of the Amiga, but it is not a well-designed game. It's not a particularly fun shooter. The story makes no sense at all. They put that stupid rendered intro on the front to try and shoehorn a dumb story in. The manual made me want to die. It's not my least favorite game of the year, but it's definitely the game that lives up to the least amount of hype.
I'd forgotten that god-awful story. It was the worst. It was so stupid. The guy was skinned alive and shoved into that chicken. That poor guy. It was bad. It was a bad story. But the game did have its cheerleaders. One Dave Velociraptor, for example. Well, since we're killing games, let's kill some games. Worst game of the year. I'll start this one off, a boater. One thing, my pet peeve of the year were games that came from the old systems and people stuck on the Amiga and then tried to tell me that these games weren't garbage. Guess what? I've played them on the old systems. I know what I like and what I don't like. And so my worst Amiga game of the year, and I want to give a dishonorable mention to TV Sports Baseball, which it wasn't the worst game we played this year, but it angered me. But I think the worst game I played this year was easily, Kickstart 2. This was a real dud. I believe Brent was on this episode with me for this one. Brent, do you remember much about Kickstart 2?
Yeah, and it makes it easy to hate because it's garbage.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah,
I hated this game.
You can go ahead and keep the footage rolling. This is definitely one of the worst games I've played this year.
Yeah, and what bothers me is, could you take a game like this and make it fun? Sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, Trials is a lot like this, except it's not crap. The thing is, the game physics, the control of the motorcycle and stuff, it just sucks. The fact that you can make your own courses just means you can fail at someone else's crap, as opposed to fail at the pre-generated stuff. I hated this game. Let it go back to the 8-bits, where I also didn't like it, I might add. And because I believe we covered this, one of the Kickstarts on our Sinclair back in the day, Bo, and I didn't like it that much then. So that was my pick for the El Dutto Grande this year. Worst game of the year on the Amiga. Boat?
For me, this was the year of the terrible sports game. on the Amiga.
Yeah.
We played, and I'm including racing games in this too.
Yeah.
We played Indianapolis 500, which is just as much fun as it sounds. It's literally 500 laps around an oval. It sucks. It's a fine technical achievement, but the game's not any fun. And then you drop right into your traditional sports games. You got your Kingpin arcade sports bowling.
Yes, that was up there.
That is, there's only I think 2 or 3 bowling games on the Amiga, and this one took no it took no advantage of the fact that it was alone in its field. It offered nothing fun and exciting to the game other than the ability to choose your shirt color.
Yeah, it did but you could bowl, and that's why I didn't pick it, but I looked at it. But the one thing you could do in that is sort of bowl. I'll give it that.
You could sort of bowl
and change your shirt. That's it.
Rounding things out, you had TV sports baseball.
Yeah,
easily the worst sports game of the TV sports series. Doesn't even deserve to be called a Cinemaware game.
no.
Just a really terrible take on the nation's pastime.
So, is there one of those you hate more than the rest?
Probably Kingpin arcade sports bowling, just because there's no panache at all in that. At least with TV sports baseball, you had an introduction, you had sort of some trappings of the Cinemaware franchise, but with Kingpin, you got nothing.
Kingpin is the TV sports baseball of bowling. They're very similar. They both, there's a sport to be played. It's there. It's represented. But you get no frills. You get no feeling that you're there. You get no fun or excitement. They've drained it all away.
They have.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you a bit on that one. I contemplated it. The only reason I didn't pick it was because I could bowl a full round of bowling on this, where on the motorcycle game I could barely move like an inch before I fell over repeatedly. So ultimately, that's why that one got picked. Let's go to the people in the Discord and see what their thoughts were. We had a couple people chime in on the Amiga side of things. So Dave Velociraptor chimed in, and all he did was cheerlead. If it saves anyone any time, Killing Game Show is number 8 on the third post. He was pulling for Killing Game Show. He loves that game. Sorry, Dave. Better luck next time. Pajako chimed in, best game, King and Balloon. Having passed this over so many times, it's just another Space Invaders clone, and then finding out that it's a great game in its own right. Worst game, and I thought you might pick this one, Boat, Turrican 3.
Turrican 3 wasn't great. It wasn't great, I'll tell you that.
It was better than bowling and the other ones you mentioned. I love 2 so much, and finally getting around to playing 3 after all these years, it was a bit of a letdown. No kidding. It was never going to live up to its predecessor, but yeah, shame. I think they tried to be too different with it, and the swing arm killed it. The swing arm was weird. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
And Barkbit chimed in. It's a mixed bag this year. I voted Mortal Kombat. Having never seen the arcade, I purchased this off the rumor mill. Was not disappointed and enjoyed it a lot. I will say I thought it was actually a pretty good version of Mortal Kombat that they ended up turning out on the old system, given what you had to work with. So before we get into our overall game of the year, boys, I just want to chat with you guys a little bit. I did a little, just for fun, number crunching, see how everything played out this year, just for the edification of our fans. So I always wonder what the most popular shows we did in the year are, and how they mesh up with good games and bad games. For Amigos this year, the most listened to podcast was Lemmings, followed by Toki and Lure of the Temptress, which I got to play that. I wasn't on that episode. But should I play it, Bo? Lure of the Temptress?
Yeah, absolutely. Tony Warner designed it.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, your boy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. For ARG, the most listened to of the shows was Games of Lavasoft. That was a fun episode. For our Sinclair, the most listened to episode, Ghouls and Ghosts. For the Atari ST Show, it's Pirates. And for the CoCo Show, it was Gatecrashers. In terms of what got watched, on the CoCo Show this year, the most watched episode, Sinistar, I had a lot of fun with that episode. The ST Show, Sid Meier's Pirates. Our Sinclair was Head Over Heels, the ZX Next version. ARG Presents, this one kind of surprised me, games you could beat on one credit. And Amigos, this one might surprise you both, because this one could have been on any of these lists. Time is Over, Elf Mania was the runaway winner.
I chalk it up to that tagline myself.
Well, listen, you had some real winners this year in the tagline.
Yeah.
Second place on the Amigos was Mortal Kombat, and third was that Final Fight episode, the new version of Final Fight, which was great. So that was a lot of fun. And just to round it out, I looked at the most popular disaster streams that I put together this year, and Amiga games on the Mega Drive was number 1, with Amiga ports of the JOTD arcade games coming in number 2. So I had a lot of fun streaming this year, and hopefully we'll get some more streaming action coming down the pike. So I guess, fellas, at this point, it's time to talk about our overall game of the year. This is the game that stood out amongst all the other games from all the other shows. And I guess just for fun, we'll start with you, the Brent. What was your overall game of the year this
Just out of
year?
curiosity, how does starting with me make it more fun?
It makes it. Would you like to not start with you?
I'm just asking questions.
What was your favorite game of the year?
Without question, it has to be The Quest for Zelda.
The Quest for Zelda.
It was so surprising. It was so detail-oriented, enjoyable. It's definitely one of the longest games that I've beaten, that we've picked up from, streaming an episode. It was just fun. It was just fun. I really enjoyed it.
It's not every day that you beat at something for the show either. That was, you did good work there on that one. And because how long did it take you? Do you recall how long it took you to beat that one?
Overall, it's about 8 hours, I think.
8 hours. 8 hours. Good Lord. That's dedication. I will go next, I guess. And listen, I'm not going to lie. Because every time I do this, I sound like a homer, but I can't help myself. Because I like what I like, brother. And people know me. And my favorite game of the year over all the shows was, bam, Dr. Acula and Dr. Acula and Frankenstein for the ZX Spectrum. It's just got everything I love in a game. I just love it. I've played a ton of this game, and I think it's a brilliant game. I just like games like this. It just works for me. And so I would say, and of course I'm buddies with Happy and that crew, but I come down the middle, and I put at the top. And I will say, the ZX had a good year this year between that and the ZX games we cover, because Baggers could be in here. I played a lot of stuff from the guys over at Rusty Pixels, and they've got a lot of great stuff in the kitty. But this was my favorite of the games that I played this year. Boater, you get the last word, my friend. What was the favorite thing you played this year?
Aaron?
Yes, sir.
Just switch it back over.
Oh, you too?
That's right.
Yes.
Listen, this is everything. This is everything that I want out of a video game.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's colorful. It's friendly. It's challenging. It's intuitive. But there are things in there that make you play strategically. It's such a well-designed single-screen platformer. There was a team of them, and I love the way that they sort of go together. And to put it all together with Happy's box set, and then which I actually ended up getting this through the charity bundle that he offered later on. And so I'm really looking forward to putting more time into this. I think at the next meeting of the Taze Valley Classic Computer Club, I'm going to break out the Spectrum and play and do some Spectrum fun stuff and fire this game up. This is a fantastic collection of titles. Hats off to the team over at the Midnight Brew for putting this together. It is my 2024 game of the year.
Just as a quick insight here, Happy's in the chat who says, rumor has it, boys, the third game, Frank and Wolf, is out next year. Hey, keep them coming. I would love to see another one. That would be outstanding. Did we have, I wasn't even going to put this in, but let's just talk about it. Was there a game this year that you hated more than any of the games that any system we covered? Brent, was there a game you hated more than anything else that we did? We know you hated some.
I don't think any of the games caused me the pain that some of the games in the past have caused me.
Yeah.
But boy, Bugaboo the Flea just had so much to hate on it.
Bugaboo the Flea. Yeah, I'm telling you, a lot of people didn't like that one, man. I can understand it. I didn't even write down a worst game of the year for myself, but I'm gonna as I look over the games that I hated. I mean, I didn't hate a ton, but if I was gonna pick one that made me the most angry, it would almost certainly be Kickstart 2. That game is frustratingly bad. I just hate it. It's just a dumb game. The only good thing to come out of that is that clip on the show where the kid goes over the hill and the announcers are laughing at him. That's the good thing from the show. That's the rest. We've done a Kickstarter game twice, and both times I watched that whole episode and I laugh my butt off every time. So I would say Kickstart 2, brother. El Stinko on the Amiga. I want more. I want better. No good. Boat, do you have anything that you hate more than anything else?
No, and that's why I think that this is a rare year for the Amiga in terms of the quality of the games. There were none of these games that I absolutely whipped myself into a rage of playing.
Very good. That's that very good way, peaceful way to finish it up. Now, that pretty much sums up all the year-end awards. It's been. How would you summarize 2024? Let's go around the horn real quick with your final thoughts before we take this to the house. Bo, we'll start with you. What were your final thoughts from the whole enchilada this year?
I've had we've had a wonderful year. We had another great boat fest. We had a great Amigathon in January or February last year that pushed us over the 35,000 mark in terms of amount donated to Children's Miracle Network hospitals. Had a great turnout for Boat Fest this year. I enjoyed swinging by for a little bit during Thanksgiving. That event again was a great success. The years just keep on rolling. I can't believe we're entering year number 10 of Amigos.
God, it is. That's crazy, isn't it, Boater? I
Yeah.
mean, we can look back to when we had no Amiga and had no idea what we were doing to get one going. You look at those early shows, we were literally babes in the woods. That's for sure. Brent, any parting messages for the listeners and the viewers?
It's tough to separate the gaming and my own personal life to say that this has been a good year. But it has definitely not been a bad year for the shows, for gaming in general. Like I said, there was no game that I can recall offhand that made me just want to hurt someone, that it was so bad. And that's something I can't say from years prior. Maybe I'm just mellowing out on games a little bit. Maybe I'm learning to appreciate some of the nuances that even bad games have. But I'm really looking forward to 2025 and finding amazing new games to try to bring to everyone.
Very good, very good. And I'll just close it up by saying I always have a good time doing the shows, and this year was no exception. I had a lot of fun. It got a little wacky there a couple times, but overall I enjoyed working with these fellas. It's always a good time. One thing I enjoyed more this year than I have in the past was the live stream. I had a lot more fun doing the live streams. Boy, the Mister sure helps fellas with the live streams. It makes it so much easier, and so you can just sort of kick back and relax. So I've enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed being involved with these guys doing stuff like Amigathon, Thanks for Giving, the International Computer Club. We had one of those this year that was a big success. And so we hope to keep the ball rolling, bring more of the same but better. And I'm looking forward to our first big event next month, Boat, which is Amigathon. Can you give people the date on that one?
Yeah, January 18th. That is a Saturday. We are going to be rolling from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. right here in Amigo Studios, raising money for Children's Miracle Network hospitals. We had a donation come in earlier this evening during the show. And that's fine. All the money goes directly to Children's Miracle Network hospitals. However, the counter does reset on January 1st. So if you would like your donated amount to count towards the total of Amigathon 2025, wait another couple days and then start shoveling the cash right into those needy kids. Because listen, we do it because they're a worthwhile charity. They've been good to us in terms of, well, actually, they don't really do anything for us. We've been good for them. We pretty much keep them afloat. That's what I'm trying to say.
They give us their unconditional love, Boat.
They do.
Love, Boat.
Listen, before we go, We did get another couple Christmas cards addressed
Sure.
to Amigo Studios, which pleases me.
We need to get an address over there.
We got a Christmas card from the Burt family, Steve Burt. So thank you, Steve. We appreciate that. And of course, it wouldn't be Christmas without a Christmas card from the one and only Paco Take. So thank you, Paco. And warmest wishes to you and yours over there in Nebraska.
We love Steve. We love Paco. Thanks, guys. Thanks everybody that reached out to us during the holidays. We appreciate that. Also, before we end the year, I want to shout out a special thank you to our good buddy Frank and all of his friends and colleagues that work at Retro Rewind. RetroRewind.ca have they've been a partner of ours for quite a while now, Boat, and we find those guys to be the best, the nicest, the kindest, the most skilled bunch, and we hope that you will consider giving them your business. That's a good place to get the hell out of this year. So let's call it a night. Thanks for all your support. A special shout out to all the supporters, all the Patreons from the Amigos, from the Retro Rotation. We really appreciate you guys. We don't mention it enough. Year after year, you guys keep us going. I mean, for real. And we appreciate it. And don't ever think for a moment that we don't, because you guys help motivate me and Brent and Boat to keep the ball rolling. We'll catch you guys in 2025 on Amigos and ARG Presents. Gentlemen, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Adios!
Happy New Year!